targeted alternative remains to be seen, but for the 59,000 people currently in ICE custody and the millions more living in fear of raids, the consequences are immediate and devastating. California is drawing a line in the sand, and it's about to reshape the entire balance of power in Congress. While Texas Republicans push forward with an aggressive redistricting plan that could flip 5 Democratic seats, California Governor Gavin Newsom just announced he's fighting back with his own nuclear option. We're talking about a special election in November that could completely neutralize Texas's power grab and potentially shift control of the House of Representatives. This isn't just about drawing lines on a map. This is about the future of American democracy, and the battle lines are being drawn right now. The stakes have never been higher as both states mobilize their political machinery in what's becoming an unprecedented interstate showdown. To understand what's happening now, we need to understand what triggered this redistricting war. It all started with President Donald Trump making a very specific demand to Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Trump didn't mince words. He wanted Texas to redraw their congressional maps to create 5 additional Republican seats before the 2026 midterm elections. This isn't the normal redistricting process that happens every 10 years after the census. This is mid-decade redistricting, something that's extremely rare and highly controversial. Trump knows that Republicans are entering the 2026 midterms with a razor-thin majority in the House of Representatives, and he needs every seat he can get to maintain control. Texas is leading the charge with an unprecedented enforcement strategy.
Inmates booked at the Tarrant County Jail moments into the intake process. And here there are close to 400 inmates being held on ICE detainers.
And I'll tell you that 98% of the people that come through the jail, they'll admit it. They'll go, yeah, I'm here illegally.
When NBC5 was at the jail in July, there were hundreds of inmates representing 22 countries behind bars who had been arrested on criminal charges and had been living in North Texas illegally.
A lot of serious offenses, including murder.
Among the more high-profile inmates are Dikerlin Alejandra Gonzalez and Mikel Coelho Perozo, Venezuelan citizens who remain under ICE immigration detainers as they face criminal charges in connection with the death of Ava Moore, who was killed on Grapevine Lake in May. Sheriff Bill Wayborn is one of 3 North Texas sheriffs whose jails have been working with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement under a 287G agreement.
Well, I would have rather them never come in the country, but if they're going in Tarrant County, if they're going to do the crime, we're going to find a place for them in the hotel until they are adjudicated.
The state has become ground zero for what political experts are calling the most aggressive gerrymandering effort in modern American history. The proposed Texas maps are designed to be surgical in their precision. Republican strategists have identified 5 Democratic-held districts that they can redesign to favor Republican candidates. The plan targets areas with significant Latino and African American populations. Communities that have historically voted Democratic. Civil rights groups are calling it a blatant attempt to suppress minority voting power, while Republicans argue they're simply correcting what they see as unconstitutional districts. But here's where the story gets dramatic. Texas Democrats knew they couldn't stop this in a traditional vote. Republicans control both chambers of the Texas legislature, and they had the votes to pass these maps. So Texas Democrats did something that sounds like it's straight out of a political thriller. They fled the state. More than 50 Democratic lawmakers packed their bags and left Texas, denying Republicans the quorum they need to conduct official business. Some flew to Chicago, others to New York, and a few went to California. They're essentially holding the entire Texas legislature hostage until the special session expires. The response from Republican officials has been swift and aggressive. Governor Abbott has threatened to have the fleeing Democrats arrested. He's asked the Texas Supreme Court to remove key Democratic leaders from office, arguing that they've abandoned their duties. Attorney General Ken Paxton has filed lawsuits to force their return. Meanwhile, federal authorities have been conducting their own operations across the state. Just last week, heavily armed federal agents appeared outside a Democratic event in Los Angeles where Governor Newsom was announcing California's response plan. The timing raised immediate questions about political intimidation.
Tonight, that striking scene outside a California event featuring the state's top Democratic figures, including Governor Gavin Newsom. A group of heavily armed Border Patrol agents conducting an operation near the venue in Los Angeles' Little Tokyo, saying they apprehended at least one person.
The reason for our presence here in Los Angeles is to make, first off, Los Angeles a safer community.
Newsom's team saying the action was meant as intimidation because inside the hall, the governor and state lawmakers were announcing a partisan redistricting plan to combat a similar Republican-led effort in Texas, backed by President Trump.
The rhetoric has reached fever pitch, with Republicans calling the Democrats cowards and derelict, while Democrats frame their actions as a heroic stand for democracy. Trump himself has suggested that federal law enforcement might need to get involved to track down and arrest the missing lawmakers. But the real game changer came when California entered the fight. Governor Gavin Newsom, who many believe is positioning himself for a 2028 presidential run, saw an opportunity to make a national statement. If Texas wants to play hardball with redistricting, Newsom essentially said, then California will play the same game. The federal government has been touting its enforcement successes as part of this broader political strategy. New Customs and Border Patrol numbers show what they're calling historic achievements in border security. The administration calls it the most secure border in history.
Illegal crossings have fallen to all-time lows once again. Here were the records set in July. Again, these numbers were released this morning. The lowest monthly nationwide encounters ever, down nearly 90% from the monthly average under the Biden administration. The lowest monthly Border Patrol apprehensions nationwide ever, smashing the previous record set the prior month in June. The lowest monthly Southwest border apprehensions ever. The lowest daily apprehension average ever. The lowest single-day apprehensions ever. And for the third straight month, there were 0 illegal aliens released into the country. Let me repeat that remarkable statistic. For the third month in a row, not a single illegal alien was released by the Trump administration into the United States of America. This is historic. Under President Trump, this border is the most secure it has ever been. When you fortify the border, when you restore deterrence, and when you empower Border Patrol agents and our brave men and women in uniform to actually do their jobs to enforce our laws, like this president has, this is the incredible result. And in the interior of our country, criminal illegal aliens continue to be arrested and removed.
But there's a crucial difference in how each state can proceed. Texas Republicans can redraw their maps through the normal legislative process because they control the state government. California, however, uses an independent redistricting commission that was created specifically to prevent partisan gerrymandering. So Newsom can't just order new maps to be drawn, he has to go directly to the voters. That's exactly what he's planning to do. Newsom announced that he's calling for a special election on November 4th, asking California voters to approve new congressional maps that would be designed to benefit Democrats. The proposed ballot measure, which he's calling the Election Rigging Response Act, would temporarily bypass California's independent redistricting commission. The enforcement actions have created a climate of fear in many communities. Federal agents have been conducting operations that have separated families and disrupted communities. These detention flights operate in secrecy, with authorities deliberately blocking their tracking information, making it nearly impossible for families to locate their loved ones.
Is N668CP, and we want to see if this public tracking site that gets its data and information from the FAA has any record of the flight. Nothing comes up.
But we were able to track the flight as it made its way back to Alexandria, Louisiana, the busiest hub for ICE deportation flights. At this point in the journey, some of the first detainees on board were possibly on this plane handcuffed for nearly 10 hours. As this ICE flight completes its 24-hour trip, Louisiana is likely the last stop in the U.S. before the people on board are deported.
The numbers tell a picture of a system in complete breakdown.
Nathan Harris and John Bell, a former assistant U.S. attorney who worked with Homeland Security, now in private practice, agree the system needs an overhaul.
You have over 3 million people in immigration court right now. Last I looked, I had a hearing set for an individual hearing just recently, and that was scheduled for 2028.
In a nutshell, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We have an immigration system that's antiquated and it's outdated.
Immigration courts are facing unprecedented backlogs while enforcement actions continue to escalate. The human cost of these political battles is becoming increasingly visible as communities struggle to cope with the uncertainty. Communities are refusing to stay silent any longer.
The people united!
After recent ICE operations in the area, step by step, the demonstrators say they're taking a stand against immigration enforcement.
The message is clear, right? We stand for solidarity, and again, like I said, we're not standing for tyranny, and so the best thing that we can do is come out and show support.
When we fight! The scene today, quite a contrast from a month ago when a large presence of federal agents, some on horseback, swept through the park. Mayor Karen Bass confronting them and calling the move a fear tactic. Then last week, an ICE raid called Operation Trojan Horse. Federal agents showing up to a Home Depot near MacArthur Park in a Penske truck, arresting 16 undocumented people.
Today, the community is taking back the park peacefully, but also sending a very strong message that Angelenos will not stand for this type of racist immigration enforcement activities.
Across the country, protests have erupted as people demand an end to what they see as politically motivated enforcement actions. The demonstrations have brought together diverse coalitions fighting for their neighbors and communities. Newsom's plan would allow the state legislature to draw new congressional lines for the 2026, 2028, and 2030 elections. The maps would then revert back to the independent commission after the 2030 census. He's framing this as an emergency measure to respond to what he calls Trump's assault on democracy. The numbers tell the story of why this matters so much. California currently has 52 House seats, with Democrats holding 43 of them. Under the new proposed maps, Democrats could potentially pick up 5 additional seats, which would exactly offset the 5 seats that Texas Republicans are trying to flip. But Newsom's plan faces significant challenges. First, he needs the California legislature to approve putting the measure on the ballot. The deadline for that is August 22nd. Giving lawmakers just days to act. Then he needs to win over California voters in November. Early internal polling shows only 52% support, which is barely enough to win, but not enough to withstand a massive opposition campaign that's almost certainly coming. The opposition to Newsom's plan is already forming, and it includes some surprising names. Former Republican Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who actually championed the creation of California's independent Redistricting Commission, says he'll oppose the measure. Charles Munger Jr., a wealthy scientist who bankrolled the ballot measures that created the commission, has promised to fund an opposition campaign. They're arguing that Newsom is destroying the very reforms that were supposed to take politics out of redistricting. The irony is thick. Democrats are now trying to override a reform that they themselves championed just 15 years ago. But Newsom has powerful allies in his corner. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has endorsed the plan. Every Democratic member of California's congressional delegation has signed on. Labor unions are preparing to spend millions to support the measure. Newsom hosted several of the fleeing Texas Democrats at the governor's mansion in Sacramento, creating a powerful visual of interstate Democratic solidarity. The message is clear: this is bigger than California or Texas. This is about whether Democrats will fight back against what they see as a systematic Republican effort to rig the electoral system. The legal and logistical challenges are immense. California would need to use updated population data to draw the new districts, but there are questions about which census data to use and how to account for population shifts since 2020. The new maps would face inevitable court challenges, particularly around voting rights issues. Meanwhile, the standoff in Texas continues to escalate. The fleeing Democrats are running out of time. The special session is set to expire on August 19th, but Governor Abbott has promised to call session after session until he gets the redistricting vote he wants. He's threatened to keep calling special sessions for years if necessary. The Democrats can't stay away from Texas indefinitely. They have families, jobs, and constituents back home. But they're also aware that returning means handing Republicans the victory they're seeking. The national implications are staggering. If both Texas and California succeed with their redistricting plans, they essentially cancel each other out in terms of House seats. But the precedent would be set for mid-decade redistricting to become the norm rather than the exception. Other Republican-controlled states like Florida, Ohio, and Missouri are already considering similar moves. Democratic states like New York and Illinois are exploring their own redistricting options, though they face more complex legal and procedural hurdles. We could be looking at a complete breakdown of the traditional redistricting process, with states constantly redrawing their maps for partisan advantage. The 2026 midterm elections are still more than a year away, but this redistricting battle could determine their outcome before a single vote is cast. Republicans are defending a narrow House majority at a time when the president's party typically loses seats in midterm elections. If they can lock in additional seats through redistricting in Texas and other states, they could maintain control even if they lose the popular vote by a significant margin. Democrats, on the other hand, see this as their chance to fight fire with fire. They're arguing that they've been playing by gentlemen's rules while Republicans have been playing to win at all costs. The broader question is what this means for American democracy. Both sides are claiming to defend democratic principles while simultaneously engaging in tactics that critics say undermine those same principles. Republicans argue that they're correcting unconstitutional districts and ensuring that voters are properly represented. Democrats argue that they're responding to an unprecedented power grab that threatens the foundations of fair elections. What happens next could reshape American politics for the rest of the decade. If Newsom's ballot measure passes in November, it will likely trigger a wave of similar efforts in other Democratic states. If it fails, it could embolden Republicans to pursue even more aggressive redistricting strategies. The Texas Democrats can't stay away forever, and when they return, Republicans will almost certainly pass their redistricting plan. The question then becomes whether the courts will intervene, whether other states will follow suit, and whether this becomes the new normal in American politics. The stakes couldn't be higher. We're not just talking about a few congressional seats. We're talking about the balance of power in Washington, the ability of either party to govern effectively, and the fundamental question of whether American elections will be decided by voters or by the politicians who draw the district lines. This redistricting war is just beginning, and the outcome will reverberate through American politics for years to come. The battle for democracy is being fought not just in voting booths, but in legislative chambers, courtrooms, and on the maps that determine who gets to vote where. And right now, both sides are playing for keeps.